Well, this was one of my most anticipated records of this year. There's something about Ninja Sex Party that just makes me very happy. You know, like my first real love of music came from Weird Al. Like Bad Hair Day was one of my first cassette tapes that I got, and I played that so much that even my dad knew most of the like words to all the songs. So, yeah. Yeah, this record was one that I was really anticipating. So let's dive in to see if it lives up to the hype.
Death metal, the metal of death. Better drink that margarita before your last breath.
These Nuts by Ninja Sex Party. So Ninja Sex Party is a duo from Ninja Brian and Danny Sexbang, and it's so interesting. I got into these guys in 2020, right during the big lockdown. And I had no idea of Danny's past work with like Game Grumps and all that. And so when I was talking about anything that Danny had done, it was always in the lens of Ninja Sex Party because I got into The Prophecy, which is my favorite of theirs. I also love Cool Patrol and Radical City. All these, like, they're blending a lot of that comedy, the internet comedy from like the early 2000s and mid 2010s, and that kind of same vein of like a Weird Al, where it's very like bait and switch, very absurd, but also kind of like very sexual. You know, they make a lot of boner jokes and keep talking about how much they want to bang people. I mean, Danny's persona on this is Danny Sexbang, and pairing up with Canadian band of Twerp to help flesh out the musical side of things. You have the creative and comic genius of Danny as well as Ninja Brian to fulfill this blending of really good music with hilarious concepts and ideas. Now, according to this album, this is their 11th record, and I want to take a little bit of to that because yes, it is their 11th album, but it also includes a number of their covers. So they have Undercovers 1, 2, and 3, as well as I think 2 compilation albums, Level Up and a very, very, very acoustic, or I think it's classy acoustic album. So in actuality, this is their 6th studio record of original material that isn't like reworked or anything like that. But it is their 11th studio record, and much like all their other studio records, it is a lot of fun. Right off the get-go, I wouldn't necessarily say this is as strong as The Prophecy, which is still my favorite one of theirs. This is along the same kind of quality that Cool Patrol and Attitude City is, in terms of, each track is a banger. They all take on a different musical flavor, even though they all kind of circle around that very accessible, very catchy, very fun, like internet meme songs from, the early 2000s and mid 2010s, while they're also dipping their toes into other genres and styles as well. Very similar to what Weird Al did in most of his albums, where he would have like the straight up parody tracks, but then he would have like an homage track where it wasn't necessarily a parody, but he was channeling a certain band to make a new track that was completely his own. And yeah, this album also opens up with an intro and outro track, which is also very good. Basically just saying, hey, this is the new album. We hope you like it. And the one thing that I will say is, unlike other tracks where like the leading singles off of the album are kind of the stronger moments on this one, I would say that some of the strongest moments aren't found in the leading singles. Like for The Prophecy, you had The Mystic Crystal, It's Bedtime, and I Don't Know What We're Talking About. And I Don't Know What We're Talking About. It's one of my favorite Ninja Sex Party tracks. As well as on Cool Patrol, you had Cool Patrol, Danny Doesn't Know, and Orgy for One. So, you had these really strong bangers to really kind of front load the album. On this one, you had I Own a Car, which came out last year, Let's Save the Earth, which came out early this year, I believe it was, and Dance Till You Stop, which features Tom Cardy, who is a brilliant and hysterical up-and-coming musical comedic artist. Very similar to Weird Al. This was like when I saw that Tom Cardy was coming on to help out Ninja Sex Party on Dance Till You Stop, it was like if Weird Al had, paired up with Tenacious D in like 2003 or 2004. Like the idea of that is just outstanding. I'm like, why didn't they pair up sooner? But I don't want to say that these tracks are bad, because they are not. They are really good. They're really fun. But I find that the best, like the A game of Ninja Sex Party, is found kind of on the second half of the album on some of the deeper cuts. My favorite track on this album, by a very large margin, is death metal. I absolutely love death metal. The whole concept of the song is that they were asked by their record company to create this death metal track because that's where all the kids are. That's where all the money is. You know, you got to have this big, heavy, intense, and brutal track to really connect with the kids. But the song itself is done like a Jimmy Buffett, very smooth, like Margaritaville kind of a style, you know, with steel drums and ukuleles and, you know, very relaxing, very like fresh beach sound. And it is hysterical. I absolutely love it. It's such a bait and switch kind of a comedy act that I find very tickling. Same with Sports Anthem, which is this big pump up the jam, big ebb and flow. You know, it's kind of reminding me of some of the Muse tracks off of like The Second Law or The Resistance. And it's all about that, you know, this is your one shot. Don't want to miss it. Everything's right in on you. And, you know, the whole line that they keep repeating is don't fuck it up, don't fuck it up, don't fuck it up. And then because it's Ninja Sex Party, he misses the shot. And you just hear Danny being like, I'm bad at sports. Again, hysterical. It's all a build up to the singular joke that you could see coming a mile away that I absolutely love. I am kind of going all over the place within this album review, so let's kind of ground it by going sequentially. I've already talked about the first and last track of intro and outro. Get Ready to Get Ready is a really fun, really bumpin'. It's very similar to the Sports Anthem, and it is basically the whole, we're going to get ready to get ready to get ready, right? It's like, yeah, we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to get everything going. But first we need to get a lot of things in place. So, you know, it's so interesting because it's very arena rock. It's very pump up the jam. And I also love the fact that Ninja Brian makes a lot more cameos on this one. We find this one here where he's the sports announcer saying like, are you guys ready to move this fucking place off of the streets? Well, we got one more sound check to do before we get going. He did this a couple of times in the past on, I believe it was the Kraken. And again, he's found on Nut Heat, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And you also feel like, because Brian did a smooth jazz record last year, you can feel like that kind of essence bleeding into a lot of these tracks here. And I don't know if it was like a chicken and an egg of which came first, that jazz album that he was writing based on some of the studio stuff he was doing here, or if he was just in that mindset and he wanted to put it here, because you hear that in the intro, you hear that in Get Ready to Get Ready, and you also hear that on Let's Save the Earth. I did skip over I Own a Car, which is just kind of a fun bop. It's very silly, you know, it's basically like the first, you know, little Billy's first car. You know, I remember when I had my first car, and it was basically the car here. The line that makes me very tickled is, the cup holders will hold anything as long as it's in the shape of a cup, or as long as it's a cup. Hilarious. And Let's Save the Earth is a really fun kind of environmental activist track, and it sounds very similar to something that Peter Gabriel would write in like the late 80s, early 90s, with that kind of, and even Sting, you know, like some of Sting's more activist-y songs. And it starts off with, hey, the polar ice caps are melting, the carbon emissions are increasing every year based on, you know, companies and corporations, and we're not taxing them, we're not doing anything about it. But your mom's really hot, and I'd really like to see her, and I really hope that we can, you know, hang out. And so Let's Save the Earth is very much that bait and switch of, yeah, let's do all this, but also your mom's really hot, and I would really like to sleep with her, right? So it is quite funny. It is quite, you know, out there. Dance Till You Drop, I've already mentioned. Tom Cardy's presence on this is hysterical, and it is so relatable. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I was in, you know, high school and university, and people are going out to parties, I'm like, I just want to stay home, listen to Rush, and read. You know, I don't want to be out there, but all my friends are like, no, you gotta come out. And I'm like, I want to go. It's 7:05 and I got a bedtime in like a half hour, man. Like, I gotta go. I was very seen in this track. I was very seen, and I really enjoyed that one. We also have a couple skits on this one. The first one is My Pet Python, which is hilarious, as well as Seatbelts. I would also include Behind the Mask in that, even though it's much more musical in that sense. I already mentioned about death metal, which I absolutely love, as well as Sports Anthem and Seatbelts. Nut Heat is a very like 1950s soda pop kind of a track, a little bit of a doo-wop in that sense, but then like halfway through, and it's all about boy meets girl. Boy is loving the fact that this girl wants a lot of him, like she is on him all the time. And then halfway through the track, it switches, and suddenly I'm pretty sure that's Matthew Mercer. I'm pretty sure it's Matthew Mercer. And I was listening to it being like, that's Matthew Mercer, where he's narrating this whole, like, you know, way in the distant future where the machines have taken over and the only source of energy that we can have is nut heat. Nice. And so people are being sent back into the, you know, past to collect. From there, you know, Behind the Mask and Diggle Bick, they're fine. You know, they're fun. Galaxy Hamster, I legit got emotional over, because who hasn't idolized their little rodent pets? You know, I had a hamster growing up, little Mo, and he was like my world. I loved him and I would play with him all the time, but he only lasted like 3 years. So, you know, the second half of this track, you know, the first half is like very power metal, very like oomph in that sense. But then the second half, it goes into almost like a Supertramp's Fool overture with a piano ballad. And I absolutely felt very emotional, because it's like, yeah, here's this little guy. I idolized him. I brought him into this godlike status, and now he's gone and he's finding his way out into the afterlife. And it's like, okay, well, now to find another one. So again, really fun bait and switch. And Boner of Peace Part 3, it's fine. You know, kind of a write-off. And then we have the outro. So, in the end, another stellar album from Ninja Sex Party. I wouldn't necessarily call this one their best. I would still reserve that for the Prophecy. But in terms of more tracks from a band that I absolutely adore and absolutely love, giving us banger tracks, gut-wrenching hilariosity in that sense. The tracks are funny. They're catchy. I can't really fault it for what it isn't, but what I can do is praise it for what it is, which is a hysterical, catchy, very accessible comedic album that I absolutely praise. So yeah, it's for that reason that I'll say These Nuts by Ninja Sex Party is one that I would absolutely pick up in physical format. It's a great time. It's a great time. If you're a fan of Weird Al, if you're a fan of the like Tenacious D or Axis of Awesome, you know, those kind of funny, very good music acts, you're going to get a trick out. You're going to get a lot out of this album. If you haven't heard of Ninja Sex Party, this is a great way to start. I would definitely also check out their other main studio albums, Attitude City, Cool Patrol, and The Prophecy. And this one can slot right into that kind of quality aspect of that. So that's what I've got for These Nuts. I will say I'm kind of disappointed that these was not spelt D-E-Z. It should have been D's Nuts, not These Nuts. But anyway, that's my only little bit of criticism about this. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.